It seems to me, and as I often share with clients when I get very passionate about your brand is not what you're selling, it's why.
So this whole drive of having a voice for our community is very, it's personal.
I got a call one day from the White House, and they say, yes, we hear good things about you. I'll be the first immigrant in charge of the NIH.
Major funding for Arab American Stories was provided by Mohammed and Jamie El Arian, the Arab American Community of Michigan, the Arab American Community of Houston, Texas, the American Syrian Arab Cultural Association of Michigan. Additional funding was provided by
Arab Americans have made lasting contributions to American institutions. Public Relations Executive Judy Habib talks about the legacy of St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital. Maha Freij found her niche as a development dynamo and helped grow access into the largest Arab American human services organization in the nation. And researcher and radiologist Dr. Elias Zerhouni had a transformative impact on medical research and policy in the U.S. as director of the National Institutes of Health. Judy Habib is the CEO of a successful Boston marketing firm. Her father, Dr. Hal Habib, was in the first generation of Lebanese and Syrian Americans who formed the board of directors of ALSAC, which raised the money to build St. Jude's Research Hospital. Judy, like her father, supports ALSAC's continuing work to find cures for childhood diseases. I grew up in Boston. I grew up in a town called West Roxbury, which is actually metropolitan Boston. I went to Holy Name School and Holy Name Church. Sometimes I feel a little pressure that I was not the, blonde hair, blue-eyed, fair-skinned, whatever. But I have it that that's part of what built my character, that I wasn't like all the other kids. While that gave me some cause for feeling less than, it also caused me to kind of find my stuff and put it out there and be proud of it. I started my career in sales for American Hospital Supply, and that was actually an outgrowth of having thought I would be in the nursing profession. And that was because my dad was a self-made, first-generation American obstetrician and gynecologist. So he was a doctor, and I'd be a nurse, and we'd all live happily ever after. And when I started my career and learned the horrifying fact that not all doctors were the, sweetheart, from the heart kinds of healers that my dad was, I said, oh, well, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. I need a plan B, and that brought me into business. We started as Kelly, Habib, John. We really believe that the brand of an organization is really the who and why of their existence. So we really just help companies articulate that brand and then communicate it in a way that people are really engaged to want to do business with them.
Have you seen this?
No,
This is
a new thing that we just did?
It's Center 78. It's like a new building in New Jersey.
Good.
Yeah,
nice.
it's kind of fun. So
Beautiful.
doing the postcards now.
Cool. All right,
Fun.
so I have a meeting. I love it. I'm beside myself. It's like 25 years, and I'm never bored. And we do work in different industries, with different sizes of companies, with different profiles of leaders. So it is never, every day is different. Circle Health is what really is the holder of the ideal for complete connected care within the community. In fact, it was funny when I was a kid and people would say, well, what would you do if you were independently wealthy? Are you ready for this? I used to say, oh, I'd be a marketing consultant. Can you imagine? I love this. This is fabulous. This is genius. It's an interesting thing, the charitable organizations today and the business world today. There's a very interesting convergence, which has been termed cause marketing, where there's this expression, those who do good do well. ALSAC stands for American Lebanese Syrian Associated Charities, and ALSAC was founded by Danny Thomas as a fundraising organization that would be exclusively devoted to raising funds for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. He looked like us, he always joked about his big hook nose, and he was someone who was of Lebanese heritage. Well, a very dear friend of his, this man by the name of Mike Tamer, said, Danny, I have an idea. What if we tap all of our Lebanese, Syrian, Middle Eastern people who have come to America and have all of them come together? Danny, Mike Tamer, and Danny's wife, Rosemarie, they got in a station wagon and from LA to Boston, stopped in every city throughout the country. And honestly, I think it could be in the Harvard Business School as a case study on empowerment, because he'd say, you know, Ayub, you're in charge of this. You, Malouf, you're in charge of that. I don't care if you want to do golf tournaments, chicken dinners, or stand on your head spitting wooden nickels. Raise money for the kids. We got a hospital to build here. And that's what he did.
There it is, the Star of Mercy in concrete, glass, and steel. The dream of a Lebanese Catholic, designed by a Methodist Episcopal architect, built by a company headed by a Jew, equipped and supported by volunteer Protestants, Catholics, Jews, Eastern Orthodox, and Muslims, staffed by Anglo-Saxons, Orientals, Negroes, people of many ethnic origins, to offer help to all the children of the world, regardless of race, creed, or economic status.
My father, Dr. Habib, was tapped to be on the board. Again, it was that, wonderful road trip. And like so many of his fellow board members, these were not necessarily already terribly established or wealthy men. I mean, my father was probably newly minted out of his residency. He was a young doctor and struggling himself. But Danny was like, no, we need medical people on this board. So, boom, tag, you're it. But all of these people from this part of the world who have names that are not like Kelly and not like, Smith, the Habibs and the Haddads and the Ayubs and the Shakers and all these sort of, what kind of name is that? What if we brought them all together and this could be their way of giving back to America for the great opportunity that we've been given? There can be nothing more devastating than a parent finding out that their child has cancer. At the time that St. Jude was founded, if your child had leukemia, chances were 9 out of 10 that you're going to lose your child. Today, chances are 9 out of 10 that your child is going to be saved. It seems to me, and as I often share with clients when I get very passionate about your brand is not what you're selling, it's why, you're in the marketplace. I think that we're in a time when meaning matters to people. I walk through the doors of the hospital after touching the statue of St. Jude that has been there from the day that Danny opened the hospital. And when you walk in and when you see these children in their little red wagons with their little bald heads and who knows what kinds of ports or masks or whatever, and their parents, it is such an immediate, okay, and I was worried about what in my life? I had what kind of an issue? I had what kind of a problem? There are no problems, there are no issues. This is a moment where it's like, okay, what can I do to help? And so to have had the privilege for the last 15 years of, 5 or 6 times a year going to Memphis and just having a perspective check, thank you, ALSAC and St. Jude, for that opportunity, because it's really kept my head and my heart where your head and your heart should be, which is, what's it all about?
Maha Freij's passion for community empowerment stems from her own personal quest. She grew up in a Palestinian village in Israel and took a leap of love to cross the ocean for her American husband. 20 years later, Maha is CFO and Deputy Director of a multi-million-dollar community services organization.
Supposedly the highest rate is Wednesdays between 3:30 and 4. That's supposedly
CAP is the Center for Arab American Philanthropy. It is the only national Arab American philanthropy organization in the country that is modeled like a community foundation without a geographic boundary, but targeting Arab Americans. We started the Center for Arab American Philanthropy, started in 2006, to allow individuals in the Arab American community to practice their philanthropy or their giving to society, whether within the Arab American community or outside of it, in the most impactful and strategic way.
How are you guys? Nice seeing you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Hey! How are you?
I'm great. I'm doing
good. Good to see you. Thank you for coming. Appreciate it. Keep it. Good to see you. Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. Hi. How are you? So good to see you. How are you? Thank you. Hi. Nice meeting you. How are you?
How are you?
So good to see you.
So how are you doing? Good. How are you?
It's been a while. How are you doing? How's the congressman? He's good. His health is good. I hope. Good.
I'm just gonna cut some of the vegetables. I think the boys should come and help us. How come we are the ones who are doing everything? I don't like that. Rusty, quiet. I think we're spoiling them, that's what I think.
I think they have a lot of homework and we should give them a break today. The waffles give them a little more.
I grew up in al-Fahim. It's this Palestinian city in what is considered the 1948 territories. So it's part of Israel. 20% of the population in Israel is Palestinian. So I belong to that crowd. People who want to have it.
I just said a good maple syrup that you like.
Omar, how long do you need? I rejected anything that can make me look like any feminine kind of look. I wouldn't learn how to cook, and I really concentrated on being very, very, very good in school. And I ended up becoming the first Palestinian woman to earn a CPA license in the state of Israel. Omar? Omar, do you want any tea?
No, thanks.
No? Okay, Habibi. Doesn't want any tea. I had a friend who was from Jerusalem. She got invited through the Union of Palestinian Women in North America to speak in their convention. That's how I met Roy when we toured across the nation to speak after the convention was done. And from there, it's a love story. So I really don't fit the profile. I had a very good job. I was happy where I was. I wasn't running from anything. I just met him in 1988, and we fell in love, and I immigrated back with him in 1989 because we got married. That's how I ended up here. We decided that we wanted to check with you about your comfort level and even if you have somebody else in mind, we can approach them, or him or her. As Arab Americans, we live in a world where we are citizens of this country that right now the main enemy that they are fighting happens to be Arab or Muslim. How does that make you feel, coming from that background? But here we are portrayed as terrorists or as uneducated, or the people who maybe the moms who don't love their children, they send them to die. And when you're a mother, having the two boys, my most precious gift that God gave me, I can't even I grew up, I grew up not proud. I didn't want my kids for 1 minute to feel not proud, the way I used to feel growing up. So this whole drive of having a voice for our community is very, very, it's personal.
It sounds like a really wonderful opportunity to kind of get the word out about some of the issues that the community's been facing. It serves an educational purpose in addition to kind of getting our profile a little higher.
A lot of our focus this year will be around the spying that's taking place in New York and with the FBI and a lot of those civil liberty issues, and then immigration issues.
You can have the ability to inspire thousands of people, thousands, tens of thousands of people. And these tens of thousands of people, every single one of them may have a dream about something, whatever it is that makes the world a better place. And if you are able to allow these people to really reach these dreams through their charitable giving, and you are able to house all of these resources in this one place that's called the Center for Arab American Philanthropy, can you imagine how the Arab American community is going to be seen? We cannot even imagine what we are capable of. That's how I believe. That's how I live my life. That what's coming and what's possible is right now, I cannot even see it. I cannot even articulate it. I don't know what it is because it's much bigger than what I can see right now.
What is the only science where division and multiplications go together? It's biology, because you multiply by division. So multiplication and division are... So I was just trying to wake you up, guys. I mean, come on.
Dr. Elias Zerhouni came to America for an opportunity to do medical research and became a leader in his field of radiology. Today, he is the president of Global R&D of Sanofi, a global healthcare company, where he leads an international team of researchers and scientists intent on discovering new treatments.
Well, I'm the president of Global R&D. I oversee both vaccines and drugs across the company. My job essentially is to truly find the best way to innovate and to bring drugs, vaccines, new preventions to people.
Driving, but all this stuff we have to have real process.
One of the issues that I see is that the industry is so cookie cutter about how it does things. There's no real different models, different ways, a spin out, a spin off, a joint venture, a partnership, and what I think is we need a bigger toolbox. So as you can see, we have a terrific group of scientists, very sophisticated, very knowledgeable, very accomplished. But when you have a large organization, it's very difficult to have all of them sort of align around common concepts, common objectives. And that's what I like to do. I like to free up the ability of people sort of come together and understand the issues, because everyone in this company is so smart, and they're all smarter than me. I grew up in Algeria. I think the most important factor, in doing what you do is how you're brought up and what values your family really tries to impart. And in my case, my father in particular was a teacher, put a lot of value on education. I always thought that I would be either a physicist or an engineer. And frankly, my family, both my father and my mother, thought that doctors were not very smart. But I had an experience when I was a student. I went to volunteer in the mountains in Algeria, and I saw how poor people, suffered from lack of health. And that touched me, and I said, it's probably a better choice to be a doctor. And then when I became a doctor, one of my uncles, who's a radiologist, showed me the first CAT scan image that was obtained in the world. And you could see inside, you could see a tumor. And then he explained to me, he said, well, it's an X-ray tube that runs around, gets data, it's processed in the computer, it has a lot of physics in it. And I said, this is it. This is what I find to be the best mix, if you will, of physical sciences, what I was always enjoying, as well as biological sciences, which I wanted to really contribute to. So the marriage of the two is what made me decide that I would be an imaging scientist. And so I talked to my professors, and they all recommended, said, the best thing for you would be to go abroad, and there are only two places you can go, it's Sweden or the United States. And that's how I ended up arriving at Johns Hopkins as a visiting scholar. When we came to Baltimore, we were shocked at the state of the city. I mean, it was much more rundown than Algiers was. And so we were like a little bit taken aback and said, oh my God, this is a very different picture than what you have on TV. Went through Johns Hopkins and was doing research. I worked on the concept of quantitative imaging. In those days, medical imaging was looking at pictures, but it was not quantitative. It didn't really calculate values to say, okay, what can I extract from that picture? I had the idea of measuring calcium to differentiate tumors which have low calcium from benign lesions that have high calcium in the lung. I created an application to prevent surgery from being performed. Well, that wasn't really done before. People noticed that, and that's the wonderful thing about America, is that people recognize merit and give you a chance. Is the hub something that can facilitate, accelerate, encourage, innovate in the one thing that makes us different, and that is to generate a drug or a therapy that will change people's lives? If you don't innovate, you're broke. But if you innovate, you have a chance. I can't guarantee that it will, but you have at least a chance to succeed. Now, I got a call one day from the White House, actually in December 2001, so a couple of months after 9/11. And when they called me, I said, are you sure you must have the wrong number. I mean, come on, you really want to talk to me? And they say, yes, we hear good things about you. We want to hear, and we want to tell you what we want to do at the NIH. I mean, I'll be the first immigrant in charge of the NIH. I had to think deep about whether or not I would take the job, because in those days, as you know, it was post 9/11. There was a lot of turmoil about, the Arab world. And I thought about it, and two things really convinced me that I needed to do this. Number one, I felt gratitude to America because I was treated well, I was given a chance. And if you've been well treated, you need to give back. And frankly, I thought public service was the best way to give back. So that was one motivation. The second was really for my children and our community, because I think that we were beaten down really by all the 9/11 events, and people were painting with a broad brush who we are, and we have, like every other society, bad apples and terrific apples. And I thought for my own children too, to show them that, you can make it here.
Let me explain exactly why the President is so grateful for your service. You have left NIH better than you found it. Very, very important. You have led NIH in such a way that it is clearly understood by everybody here that the goal is to spend the $28 billion, the taxpayers' money, effectively, and most importantly, more effectively every year. There is a mindset here.
Well, after I left the NIH, I was asked to also become an ambassador, a special envoy, presidential envoy for President Obama in science and technology to bring more collaboration between the U.S. and the Muslim world. So we went around, visited many countries, tried to identify what would make a real difference. Because if people are sharing knowledge through science, because science is a universal language, they're more likely to also bring peace. And we need that. For Arab Americans, I encourage them, don't shy away from being involved. Be involved, participate, contribute, because at the end, that is what will make a difference.
I am Neda Ulabi. Hope to see you next week for more Arab American stories.
Major funding for Arab American Stories was provided by Mohammed and Jamie El Arian, the Arab American Community of Michigan, the Arab American Community of Houston, Texas, the American Syrian Arab Cultural Association of Michigan. Additional funding was provided by